Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It means the world to me. Thank you so very, very much. And today we welcome along, yes, another member of the GSA family. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome along Georgia Bowers. Did I say that right? Georgia Bowers?
You did, yeah.
Yeah, it's a common theme on here. I always have to correct people's names. I should do it before I start. It always happens. Anyway, so Georgia Bowers, an applied theatre expert, as well as creative aging specialist, academic, pro-aging advocate, and everything in between. So for more about Georgia, for anyone who's unfamiliar, this one is for you. So Georgia focuses on the aging population, care homes, and aging positively, using her creative powers to spread the word and give back to the elderly community. Her practice started in 2014 when she founded a resident-led theatre company, whilst being an activities coordinator for one of the UK's leading care home providers. Since then, she has worked with other homes, hospitals, shelters, digital platforms, creating spaces for creativity, critical reflection, and building communities. Her work has been recognised at some of the most prestigious institutions, such as the Tate Modern, Alexandra Palace, the BBC, the BFI, which is the British Film Institute, and The Stage. She holds a first-class degree in performing arts from arts and music from the Chichester University and an MA in applied theatre from Central School of Speech and Drama. In 2023, she completed her PhD from the University of Portsmouth with her thesis, Applied Theatre in Later Life, Facilitation, Participation, and Shame Resilience, which explored how theatre can support emotional well-being and the collective voices in the elderly community. And on top of all that, she is the program leader and lecturer for the BA Honours Applied Contemporary Theatre at GSA, and last year was awarded the Early Career Teacher of the Year from Surrey University's Arts, Business and Social Sciences Department. And also stay tuned for her upcoming debut book, Aging on Stage, Creative Aging and Theatre, which confronts aging, tackling against shame and stimulating shame resilience in later life. And of course, visit her website, which is also down below in the description. So, Georgia, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. And wow, what an introduction.
Hey, it's all you, mate. That's all your work.
Well, I'll try.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's impressive CV you've got there. Obviously we'll delve into all of your work and stuff in just a moment, but we start at the beginning. So in your case, where did it come from? The love of the arts, theatre, being creative, being in this business, where did it come from?
That's a really, really good question. So I fell into theatre really accidentally. How I got into it was my mum saw an advert in the local Gazette when I was living in West London,
Hmm.
and it was for what was known as the Summer Youth Project at the Beck Theatre in Hayes. And they were having an audition, and my mum didn't really know what it fully was. She thought it was going to be like a summer camp that you might send your children to keep you busy in the summer. And so I went along for this audition thinking it'd be more of a taster. And it wasn't. It was full on Broadway babies, little girls with their hair in the ballet bun and ballet tights and things. And I turned out and was completely out of my depth, didn't have a clue what was happening. But I did it, gave it my best shot. And then at the end of the audition, the director said, right, I want that kid in the show. And that kid was me. And
Brilliant.
so I got in, and the show was Guys and Dolls. And I remember it so fondly. It was such an amazing experience. I had so much fun. And I met people on that show that I still know now today. And that really just opened the door to this whole other world that without that really chance opportunity, I would never have accessed, because nobody in my family was in the arts. Nobody had ever, gone to drama school or anything like that. And so, yeah, it really was those 2 weeks at the Beck Theatre Hayes, which really changed my life.
Yeah, oh, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, what a show to start with, Guys and Dolls, right?
Mm.
I mean, I did that once back in the stagecoach days, which is it's like a primary school sort of like club or something that you do alongside. I know a few people have been on that as well, but yeah, I mean, do you remember like the first moment where you thought, "Wow, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be in this."
I do really clearly. So I was 10 years old when I did Guys and Dolls, and I remember it was the opening night, and because I'd never done anything like this before, I had no idea what to expect. And I just remember being on the stage, we were doing all our songs and our dances,
Mm,
and I just loved the environment. I just
mm,
loved being in a theatre, being with creators. I loved watching the director make those creative choices. And I remember afterwards coming out at the stage door with my mum and dad waiting for me and walking to the car and thinking, I want to spend the rest of my life doing something in the theatre. I just love being in this environment.
mm.
And I can remember that thought as if it was yesterday. And, people say about getting the bug in theatre.
Oh, definitely.
And I think it's so true. And I definitely caught the bug, at 10 years old. And yeah, just didn't stop. I became really determined um, that although I was very much the outsider and very much the underdog in an industry where, as you all know, there's so much nepotism
Hmm.
and, generations of families who go into this industry. So even though I, was very much on the back foot, I was determined to somehow make it happen. And I did.
Brilliant. That's what we like to hear. Yeah, so you've done all your stuff. You've had your guys and dolls kind of light bulb moment, and you're thinking, yeah, this is what I want to do with my life. So let's go back to your time at Chichester, where you got your BA in Performing Arts and Music. So how was your time in Chichester?
So that was a really, really important 3 years for me in what I didn't know at the time was going to become the foundation of my theatre practice. So I chose to go to the University of Chichester because at that time within drama school conservatoire training, it was very much still aligned with the traditional actor training or musical theatre. It wasn't a landscape that we now have today, which has courses like the one that I do at GSA, which is more theatre making.
Mm,
And I was 19, I was really interested in actually making my own work and being very political with it. So I went to Chichester and it was a really tough 3 years, like I think any good and robust undergraduate degree is and should be,
oh, yeah.
but it really challenged me. And I think what I took most from being there was it completely challenged my understanding of what theatre could be. And I turned up having done, the classic sort of musicals, West Side Story, Grease, things like that, which have a tremendous amount of value and are very important as part of our cultural landscape. But looking at artists like Marina Abramovich, the Worcester Group, DV8,
Mm,
I was seeing work that was being created from the ground up. And not only was it interesting and engaging and entertaining, it was also really questioning society.
mm.
And so much of it had really deep rooted social underpinnings that I just thought was fascinating. And it's at the University of Chichester where I first discovered applied theatre.
Mm.
So in many ways, that was another really pivotal moment in my journey and in my life course.
Yeah, I think, of course, Chichester as well. It's a brilliant place for, for theatre in general, I think, because, that the Chichester Festival was like the original founders, where the original founders of the National Theatre all congregated, to Laurence Olivier, John
Mm,
Gielgud, Maggie Smith, all these
mm,
incredible people, Judy Dench as well, I mean, you went to a part of the world which had classical theatre in the air, the very air that you breathed,
mhm.
I think, and that's a big part of it as well. But yeah, your first experience of applied theatre, what was that?
So it was in my second year of my undergrad degree, and the way that they ran that degree at the time was you got to pick a couple of modules that you wanted to do, and one of them was applied theatre, and I had absolutely no idea what on earth it was.
Mm.
Um, they said that it would be a project where you would create a piece of performance for young people, and I remember thinking, hey, how hard can that be? And so I, signed myself up, and it was again it was a stumbling into what was going to become a life-changing experience. I was taught by an academic called Dr. Louis Jenkins, and Louis just opened up this whole other world about how theatre, it's more than just fun, it's more than just entertainment. It can actually be used to really spotlight very important key social issues that perhaps we as a society aren't recognizing or aren't talking about enough. And I remember, I think it might have been after the second class, thinking, this is amazing. this is so powerful, but also so much fun. And I remember being sat in the library thinking, imagine if you could do this for a job. So I got my laptop, Googled it, and I thought, oh my goodness, you can do it as a job. And that was the spark. And in that first project, I worked with two fantastic fellow students. One was whose name is Jade Beckett, and another is Dame Marachi Court. And we created a piece of theatre alongside another person who's an artist now called VJ Patel, and it was called Who Are You? And it was a piece of theatre that challenged homophobia in football. And then we took that to a local college. And again, it was the first time that I had witnessed people really sitting up and listening in the audience. And the audience creating that sense of empathy with the main character who was discovering their sexual identity and sexual orientation whilst being in this football sphere, and all the homophobia and difficulties that particular culture encounters. And yeah, I just thought, I think this is what I want to do with my career.
Yeah, and I think that's, you tackle a lot of really big issues, and I think that's something that obviously theatre can do in general, but I think applied theatre really, it feels like from what I've read that you target a really specific area of which you want to, so like a community which is to help. Like we'll talk about your work with the elderly community and just a bit later on, but homophobia in sport, and I think now, in these days, things are a lot more accepting. But if you were, say, a gay footballer 20 years ago, God knows what you'd be hearing from the stands, and I bet you probably heard some really, really tragic stories and stuff like that. What's it like collecting all that information and hearing about all this stuff that needs to change?
Well, I think when you are an applied theatre practitioner, you have to really consider the emotional work that goes into this, because so often you are hearing stories that can be really difficult and upsetting. Equally, you hear stories that are joyful and wonderful and inspiring. And I think what I learned through that experience is it's not just about making great art and making work that moves people, but also it's how do you keep yourself well. And that's just as important as your practice. In fact, it should be central to your practice, in my opinion, that you consider, how do I look after my physical and mental well-being? And for me, in my work today, that looks like leaning on peer support, so having reflective conversations with people who are doing similar sort of work. It's having reflective practice on my own, so journaling, and then unpicking those journals to see what are the key themes that are emerging, and then also not being afraid to engage with therapy. So I've had a therapist since I was about 23. I first engaged with therapy when I worked at London Bubble Theatre Company. I was really fortunate at that time that they had that provision to work with a psychotherapist. And it's something that I've always kept doing. And for me, that's been transformational, not just on a personal level, but also on a professional one too.
Yeah, and I think that's really great that you because it feels like there's a big opening up to this thing. Obviously, theatre, I've talked about a lot of things. Like it's a vulnerable act, but it feels like there's an added level of vulnerability in applied theatre because you're dealing with such big topics. But more on that just in just a moment. So tell me about your time at Central, because you did your MA in applied theatre. So you've got obviously an MA is just a year's course. So how did you make the most of your year intensive of applied theatre at Central?
So I had a fantastic time doing my masters at Central. Um, it was amazing to go to a drama school. It was amazing to walk up the steps and see big names like Judi Dench, and for me, I started off my life, in Hillingdon in West London, and I never thought in a million years I would be in an institution in a space like that. So that was fantastic, just being there. And I think I just absolutely threw myself into the learning. It was a really interesting cohort that I was a part of. It was very intergenerational, which I loved. So there were people like myself who had come straight from a BA degree, and I was 22 at that time, but equally I was working with people in their 50s. So it was a really cross section of society and experiences, which I think enriches you as an emerging artist. And I think for me, what was the best bit in a way was the work placements.
Mm.
I did an array of amazing work placements, one being at the Hampstead Theatre, where I was an assistant producer on their first ever, what at that time was called the Page to Stage Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a literary festival that they had never run before. And I got on the ground experience of, producing a festival and looking after a space. And I got to work with people like Rupert Everett,
Mm-hmm.
Sheila Hancock was there,
Wow.
Paul O'Grady, a real cross section of stars and, heritage artists, people who have really defined what we know as the cultural sector in the UK today. So having opportunities like that was phenomenal.
I bet.
And it gives you that opportunity to network as well and to make those connections that have really supported me as my career's developed.
Yeah. Did they ever leave you, like those guys that you work with in particular, did they ever leave you with like a one bit of advice or a one liner that really stuck with you that you still use today?
Well, I remember having a chat with Zoe Wanamaker, who was doing a show
Wow. It's honest.
at the Hampstead at the time. And I said to her, what would be your advice for somebody going into this industry? And it always makes me laugh. I remember she said to me, don't do it. And I remember her saying, you have to be incredibly resilient if you're going to go into this world, no matter what you do. I think a lot of people think that theatre is just on-stage performance, and it isn't.
Mm.
There's so many different roles. I think whatever you do in the theatre sector, you have to be incredibly determined, hungry for it, huge amount of resilience. And I also think you have to make sure you're always enjoying what you're doing. And so, yeah, that really stemmed from her advice, and I was very, very thankful to her for it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's these little things, just and it's becoming a bit of a cliche, I think, for us artists, which is to keep going, keep all this stuff. But I remember actually, but it's true. I remember there was, I think Anthony Hopkins did an interview in America once, and he just turned 80, and he said, and the interview, I think it was it Jimmy Kimmel? I don't know, one of them out there. But he said, "What's one thing that in your 80 years?" What have you learned? What's one thing you could share with the younger generation? And he simply said, just keep going. Just
Yeah.
keep, just keep going.
Absolutely, and I think don't be afraid to pivot.
Mm,
And I was once in a shop and there was this little plaque, and I've actually still got it. I was 19,
mm,
and it said to me, "Sometimes on the way to the dream, you get lost and you find a better one." And I think that is so, so true.
that's nice.
And when I, first started doing my undergraduate degree, I wanted to go and I wanted to make my own art and be a theatre maker. And on that journey, I discovered applied theatre. And if I had stayed shackled to the original dream, I could have let that fantastic opportunity go. And my advice to anybody who I mentor or that I work with at GSA is follow your curiosity and follow your intrigue.
Mm,
So if a job comes up and you think, oh, that's interesting, go for it.
mm.
Yeah, and I'm a big, big advocate for learn on the job. I've definitely taken roles that I wasn't 100% ready for. And if I was completely honest, wasn't 100% sure if I could do, but I thought, you know what, I'll learn as I go and I'll make it happen. So
Absolutely.
yeah, would be my advice for somebody.
Yeah. And of course, that brings me on to your PhD from the University of Portsmouth. How would that, because I'm right thinking PhD is 3 or 4 years of study.
It it's generally 3 years, but I submitted my doctoral thesis in 2.5.
2.5. Wow, you worked
Mhm.
fast.
Yeah,
Quick. Yeah. Yeah.
very quick.
Yeah. And how many words was your final thesis?
80,000. It was a beast.
Yeah. So, I was, like when at university and you write essays which are like 3,000 words long
I know.
and you're thinking, oh God, how am I going to write 3,000 words? But 80,000, what was it like putting that together?
Um, I loved it. My PhD was one of the best things I've ever done. I know that a lot of people find it really difficult, and it was hard. It absolutely is not a walk in the park. Um, but for me, it was a labour of love. It was so joyous to do something for for 2.5, 3 years. That was my passion. It was my passion project. I had phenomenal supervisors who were Professor Catherine McNamara and Professor Erica Hughes, who's
Hmm.
now at the University of the Arts London. And they nurtured me in such a way that I was continuously growing. And I think if you get amazing supervisors, that makes such
Yeah,
a difference to your experience and your journey.
hugely.
And thanks to them, that PhD was life changing.
Mm.
In so many different ways. So writing 80,000 words, to come back to your original question, um, I think you have to break it down. If you sit there at your laptop and think, right, page one, 80,000 words, then it is, it's a mountain that you're going to climb. But I received really good advice from an academic called Professor James Thompson, who's at Manchester. And he said to me, when you're a writer, you have to treat it like being a marathon runner. So a marathon runner would run every day. And he said, so if you're a writer, you've got to write every day. And
Mm.
that was a fantastic piece of advice. And that's what I did. And that's how I very quickly, in 2.5 years, got to those 80,000 words. And now I'm writing my book and I generally write every day.
Fantastic.
And that was a great piece of advice.
Yeah. Any news on the book? Where can people go and get it?
So I'm hoping to submit in September of this year,
Hmm.
and then because it's an academic book, it has to go through rigorous processes to check things and things like that. But I hope it'll be released early 2027. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, please do. Please do. Yeah, you've got time. We speak in January of 2026 right
Mm.
now, so you've got time. So to
Yeah,
make
fingers
it
crossed.
yes, make it perfect. No, of course it will. So let's get into some of your work. So the main body of today, of course, is your work in applied theatre. So for anyone who's unfamiliar or doesn't know what it is, what is applied theatre?
Good question. So, applied theatre is an umbrella term that is used to describe a theatre practice where theatre is used to spotlight the wants, needs, desires, and concerns of a particular community. And generally, within applied theatre, those communities tend to be spaces where they're underrepresented and their voices are not being heard. So it's a very broad field, which makes it fantastic because some practitioners work in prisons, others work in schools. It could be with people with learning disabilities. It could be women who have experience of domestic violence. It could be war-torn countries, refugees. It could be all sorts of different communities. And within that, I do something that's called creative aging. So I specialise in working with older adults and using creativity, which in my case, I use theatre to lobby on behalf of them and advocate for their rights.
Hmm. Brilliant, perfect. So yeah, what is it about the elderly community? Because I know you've done so many. Let's get some of your stuff in here. So you've got the Lifehouse Project, of course. Oh, that's slightly different. That's LGBT inclusive care and housing provision, prejudice amongst the elderly queer population as well. I mean, can say queer now, just for the record. And you've also got the Lifehouse project as well. Yep, I've said that twice. But you've really and I've seen that some of your work was actually shared with the BBC as well. You did active workshops and to help people within the elderly community who sadly have issues with loneliness and they don't have much family anymore. Feel a bit isolated and they want to get together. And I think in the one in the news, you just got together and played like games and stuff, and you gave them monologues to do and all that kind of thing. And it's that community building which I think they crave. And I think that it's just that feeling of I'm not alone anymore. Or I don't feel alone anymore, which is, a big advantage of that. But more on that a bit later. So I'm just interested to know about. I felt like there's a link here between to another practice as well, which is verbatim theatre as well.
Mm.
I feel like the two of them, obviously, they're unique and they are different, but I feel like the two of them do go hand in hand a lot of the time. Of course, verbatim theatre is where you create a script which is made up of, say, you're doing something based on interviews, the script will be entirely the interview transcripts. There'll be nothing artificial in there, nothing, no artistic license. It's all what was said. Am I on the right lines there? That there is a parallel between the two?
Yeah, I think to an extent. So, I mean, the way that I work with older adults, we're definitely taking their lived experiences and using that as the foundation for the theatre that we're going to create, and ultimately using their lived experiences to identify what is the social issue that we want to tackle here. So, I think it follows a similar process to verbatim theatre where there is a often conversations and testimony and this idea of being the expert of your own life and your own knowledge
Hmm.
and the way that you've navigated the world. I think where my work differs is that often we will, me and the team that I work with will take those experiences and stories, and then we might merge them. So we create a central character which represents, let's say, maybe five different people, but those five different people had a very similar experience. So we have just one character embody them. And in my work, I heavily rely on a devising process. So whenever I work with older adults, I never enter a project with knowing what we're going to do or what the theme is. And I've been fortunate enough to work with organisations that have supported that. And it's through theatre activities such as storytelling or character development or improvisation where I will discover, okay, what's the common theme coming up here? And then that will be what's going to be the theme of the overall project. And then we slowly will create scenes and characters and a script and ultimately a performance if that's what the group wants to do.
Yeah, and if I know, of course, I listened to your appearance on the well, GSA's got its own podcast now, GSA 90. Shout out to the guys there, hosted by Catherine McNamara, who you mentioned earlier, has also been on this show as well. Yeah, so I remember you talking about you start those initial conversations that lead to social change, and I'm just curious to know, like, what kind of social change are you fighting for specifically?
So I think within my work at the moment, it falls into two categories. So the first one is ageism, and that is really linked to what started off as my PhD research.
Hmm.
So my PhD research, I led the Chatter Project, which is a theatre group at the
Hmm.
Chichester Festival Theatre.
Yep.
And that was where I engaged with a group of older adults who were living independently in the community and had full mental capacity. And they came to the Chatter Project once a fortnight. And over a period of time, what I noticed is we had lots of stories of ageism always coming up. So this idea of I've got wrinkles, I'm ugly. People treat me like I'm a child just because I appear visibly older. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. And what the research discovered is that theatre lays a very fertile soil for those stories to emerge. But what was most exciting for me as a researcher is that when older people regularly came to the group and regularly took part in theatre activities, it created what's known as shame resilience.
Hmm.
So ultimately, ageist encounters generate feelings of shame. So shame being I'm no good, I'm unworthy, I don't deserve belonging, connection, and theatre created a resilience towards that shame. So, a huge part of my work is about challenging ageism, challenging society's understanding of how we view growing older and older adults, and making a contribution towards shifting how we perceive growing older. And then the second area of my work is the Lifehouse Project, which you mentioned, and that is a project which uses theatre to lobby for the rights of older LGBTQ plus adults living in England. And at the moment, we have created, in partnership with London Bubble Theatre Company, an animation. And the animation was co-created with older LGBTQ plus adults living in London. And the animation is designed to spotlight what are the issues for this community in relation to care and housing. And also, what are the potential solutions and strategies that professionals working in care homes or at home care or in housing provision, how can they be more LGBTQ plus inclusive?
Hmm.
And so at the moment, those are my two main areas of work.
Yeah, I mean that. So sorry, forgive my naivety here, but I feel like there's the fact that you want to raise the fact that some elderly people who are in the LGBTQ plus community and they're having trouble getting housing. I mean, is there still have they been? Is there still an issue of homophobia even in just still trying to buy a house or rent somewhere?
So there is, it may be very surprising here in the UK, but there is, a tremendous amount of homophobia or biphobia or transphobia.
Mm,
And within the Lifehouse Project, what we target specifically is people who are living in care homes, or they're having care at home, or they are living in a housing provision, which may be a retirement community, for example.
mm,
And so, what we learned from the research is that a lot of members of the LGBTQ plus community are really fearful of, say, having a handyman coming to their home because of fear of prejudice and discrimination.
mm,
And within the care sector, I think it's really important to acknowledge that it is an international workforce. And there is a significant proportion of that workforce who are coming from countries where to be gay is still illegal.
mm.
And in our interviews with carers, who were all fantastic, they were so open and honest and brave. A number of them shared how, in the country that they have come from, if you are found to be gay, it is death by stoning. That is the punishment. So we do have, professionals coming from these cultures where it may be on a subconscious level, there is that social coding that, to be in yes, for example, a lesbian relationship is wrong on some level. And that can create sometimes completely unintentionally prejudice behavior,
Mm.
which is really problematic. And so what we're doing, sorry, with the Lifehouse Project is we're taking that animation that we created and we've placed it in one care home and one housing provider as part of their ongoing EDI staff training. And we're measuring the impact of it. So ultimately, how do those settings become more LGBTQ plus inclusive because of this animated film? And yeah, we're seeing fantastic results at the moment. And later this year, we're going to be hosting an online event where we'll be sharing all of that data and the
Brilliant.
impact in full.
Brilliant. Yeah. Is there any updates on that? When can people expect that?
So the animation is on our website at the moment. So if you were to put into Google the Lifehouse Project, University of Surrey, our webpage will come up. And we just ask people enter their details before accessing it. And that's so we can keep track of who's viewing it and where this animation is going.
Hmm.
And then you can see it for free. And then we'll be
Brilliant.
having our, we're hoping to do an event in Pride Month, which will be in June. So yeah,
Brilliant.
keep watching. More to come on that.
Yeah, and it's like you're spreading an important message there of it still happens even in later life, sadly for some people with that community as well. Do you know, I remember a story of I won't say their names, but I remember when I was in Guildford there were two guys on my course, out and proud, gay people, and one of them said, "Oh yeah, I walked down the street the other day, and someone just spat at me." Again,
Yeah.
and the other one just casually looked at him and went, "Oh yeah, that happens to me as well."
Yeah. Well, we had a story in the theatre workshops of somebody. So we did the Lifehouse project in two halves effectively. We ran a pilot project initially in 2024. And we actually made a film about that, which is also on our website. And in that pilot, we ran theatre workshops for 6 weeks because
Hmm.
we wanted to just see what happens, when we use theatre in this space. And a story emerged, and because we did it at Tonic Housing, which is the UK's first LGBTQ plus affirmative retirement community in Vauxhall. And we had a story about a resident who was living there, and their partner had been in a care home in South London, and they had received such horrific abuse from the carers and staff there. One of that abuse was staff were putting cigarettes out on this person. Now, I started off working in a care home, and anybody watching this who works in a care environment will know that they are hugely regulated environments. Every time there is a bruise or a cut, it is recorded and logged, and it would be remarkable. In fact, it would be unbelievable that somebody was having cigarettes put out on them and people didn't know. And that case did go to the courts, and there was, an outcome of that. And we hope that behaviour like that will never happen again. But that's why we're doing the Lifehouse Project, because unfortunately we are living in a society where the queer community are encountering prejudice on an everyday basis. And fundamentally, that is wrong. And that needs to change. And that's what we hope the Lifehouse Project, in some capacity, can do, and ultimately contribute to a more LGBTQ plus inclusive environment within care and housing provision. And in the long run, we're interested in looking at the NHS, looking at nurses and doctors, how they're caring for this community. So yeah, it's something that I'm really, really passionate about, and I'm excited to see where we're going to go next with it.
Yeah. Keep up with it, man. Keep going, as Anthony Hopkins says.
Yeah.
And I just hearing you say that, I remember that, just going back to my story just for one moment, they said, oh, they spat at me. Oh yeah, they did the same thing. That was 2022.
Yeah.
So that was only 4 years ago, and it's still happening, unfortunately. And and we need more projects like yours to keep spreading awareness. Is that, yeah, people are different, but that doesn't mean that you have to show any kind of contempt or prejudice simply because they're different to you.
Absolutely.
We're all our own unique person more than anything, and I think that's what your work is showing more than anything. I mean, I'm just curious. Well, what other stories have you heard that you can share?
With regards to the Lifehouse Project,
Yeah, Lifehouse Project, Chatter Group, like stories that have really stuck with you, which make you think, I need to, we need to tell these stories, and these stories like have motivated you to go, let's put on a show and let's make a change.
it's a good question. So the Lifehouse Project is it's a project that I am working on in collaboration with two other scholars at the University of Surrey, so Professor Andy King and Dr. Richard Green, who are both from a sociological background. And how this project came about is we were chatting, and they were really interested in using the arts, and in particular theatre, within LGBTQ plus housing and care research. And so that was one reason why the Lifehouse Project came to life. But a more personal reason for me is when I was working at London Bubble many years ago now, I used to run a creative group in a sheltered housing unit in Peckham. And I had this lovely gentleman come to the group. He'd been coming for a few sessions, and he pulled me to the side and he said, I need to talk to you alone. And what I'm going to tell you, I think it may result in me not coming anymore. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, what is this? What could possibly be so bad that you think you have to remove yourself from the group? And he basically shared with me that he was gay and he had never told anybody before. Nobody knew. And he felt such a level of concern and ultimately shame that he felt that because he was gay, I would ask him to leave the group.
Wow.
And that story has always stayed with me. And of course, in that moment, I thanked him for sharing such an incredibly vulnerable moment with me and for feeling safe to do that. I reassured him that we absolutely want him in the group. Something like that would never, ever stop his participation, and that we our arms are open wide to everybody. But the story stayed with me, and I always thought, I think there's more to that. I don't think this person is on their own in feeling that way. So that's an example there of seeds being planted, and that was, oh, let me think, maybe oh, just try, maybe 10, 11 years ago now.
Wow.
And it wasn't until, 2024 where the Lifehouse Project was born. So many years have passed since then, but the stories never do. And I remember everybody that I work with. I keep every card, every small little gift, every token, whether it's a
Nice.
badge or I've had people give me like a special coin before. I keep everything. And I always say that the older adults that I've worked with have given more to me on a personal level than I could ever give to them. So they're all incredibly special to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. And I feel like there's so many things that, I mean, I just get an image now of you, like you scanning the news or the world or just people watching or something like that, and you just think, how can I make things better? What issues are there out there which affects a lot of people? How can I tackle that using the arts? Again, shows that it's a real profession. It's a real thing, nothing to be looked down on at all, because this is a little phrase I have for the show, which is, it changes the fucking world. It really does,
Mhm.
and makes a huge amount of difference. I mean, and having just heard that, what stories then have you heard about, you know, as a result of you putting on shows
Mhm.
and getting shows together, what reactions have you got which made you go, right, I'm doing a good thing here?
Oh, that's a big question. So I think more recently with the Lifehouse project, we've had this animated film be part of EDI staff training, and we now have those two settings who are actively looking at changing different policies, for
Mm,
example, to ensure that they're working in a more LGBTQ plus inclusive way. And so, for example, one setting is actively asking residents for their pronouns and is now on the staff on their badges putting their pronouns. Now, that may seem like a really small thing, but actually it's a huge thing because it's acknowledging that people do have pronouns and that gender is very much fluid,
mm,
and that this is an LGBTQ plus inclusive environment. Even just having the LGBTQ plus flag visible in these settings is a powerful, visible act of allyship. So I have examples like that where organizations are changing the way that they work as a result of these projects. And then I have more personal examples. I'm just writing about this in the conclusion of my book. There was a resident, sorry, not a resident, there was an older person I worked with when I was at London Bubble. And I used to run a group called Tea Break Theatre.
mhm.
And it was a mental health group, really, for older adults who are struggling with their mental health, or perhaps they have a mental health diagnosis. And one day I was in the office and this woman came up and she had just had a stroke, and she was so nervous, so shy, and she could barely look me in the eye. She had this hat on and it was pulled right over her eyes.
Yeah.
She slowly came through the office door and I gave her a big hello and we sat down, had a cup of tea.
Hmm.
And she joined the group, which was amazing. And we had 2 years of watching her grow. It was like it's like watching a tiny rosebud come into full bloom. And then about 2 years ago I went back to London Bubble for an event, and she was there, and she was still part of this group, but now she was one of the main characters in the performance, which was brilliant. And at the end she came up to me and she held my hand so tightly, and she said to me, I want you to look at this. And she brought out her purse that she kept inside her jacket pocket by her heart. And as she opened the purse, she brought out this crumpled bit of card.
Hmm.
She unfolded it and she said, This is the leaflet for Tea Break Theatre that you gave me when we first met. And I always keep it in my purse and I keep it close to my heart because it came from you. And she
Wow.
said, When I first met you, Georgia, because of my age and that I'd had a stroke, the world didn't see me. But I came here and you saw me. And
Uh,
I just remember feeling so, so incredibly moved that I had and not just me, it's the group, it's the theatre as an art form, and it's the organisation had in some way had a positive impact on this individual's life.
Mm.
And but there's lots of stories, like that, where just on a more personal level, theatre, and it's the gifts of theatre,
Mm.
has really positively contributed and sometimes changed somebody's life.
Yeah.
And that's the best part of the job, really.
Yeah. Oh, hugely. Yeah. No, I've got a story as well for something quite similar. I remember that I used to work in pubs, and I remember this one day. I think it was like a Wednesday or a Tuesday afternoon or something like that. So just open. It's like 12:15 in the
Mm.
afternoon. So very, very quiet. No one's in having a pint at midday. Well, it depends where you are, really. Uh, and uh, and I remember this place. It's very, very much a foodie place. And this lady came in, and she was, I'd say, about late 60s, early 70s, and she came in with this little dog. It was like a little Yorkshire Terrier or something like that. And she came in and she ordered this. I just said, "Hi mate, how you doing?" All that kind of thing. She's like, "Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna sit down. I'll come get some food in a sec." I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So she ordered like a senior portion of fish and chips, mushy peas, and she had like an apple crumble or something afterwards, and two large glasses of Chardonnay and stuff. And I went over to sort of clear our table. I said, "You all finished?" Yeah, yeah. He said, "Yeah, all finished. Yeah, yeah." So I cleared everything, and then I just sort of came back round afterwards, and she said, "Excuse me," and I said, "Yeah, sure. But can I help you?" And she said, "Well, can I just say something?" And immediately I thought, "Oh God, like, what was there fish overcooked? Did she not like the chips? Did she not like the wine? Was it not cooked?" And I just thought,
Mm.
oh, okay. I thought, okay, fine. What's going to say? What's she going to say? So yeah, of course, yeah. What's up? And she said, "Can I just say, look, this is the first time I've been out of the house since my husband died,
Mm.
and it's taken me a couple of weeks to really pluck up the courage to actually go out and do something completely just by myself like this. And I just want to say that you've looked after me really, really well. The food was lovely, and you've just made this process so much easier than I ever thought it would be. So thank you for that." And
Yeah.
I was just stumped. I didn't know what to say. I said, "Well, no worries. Just if you need anything else, you just let me know." Yeah, and I'm so sorry to hear about your husband and stuff. She said,
Mm.
"Yeah. Is there anything else I can get you?" She was like, "No, I'm fine. I'm just gonna finish my wine, then I'm gonna go home." I was like, okay, yeah, no worries. I had to go back through the kitchen or out to the back and just take a moment, and I was just like, bloody, I was like, wow. Was not expecting that at all. And
Mm.
I think another string to your work is that until someone tells you their story, and I think it's true in life in general, is that you have no idea what someone's going through.
No.
Espe- You have no, I mean, especially if it's someone you've never met before, just a random passerby when you're going through, I don't know, Leicester Square or something like that, or you come out your house and but you have no idea what someone's going through, and they could have just been told the best news in the world or the worst news in the world, and just be kind always.
Absolutely, and something that I really draw on in my work, and I'm writing about a little bit in my book, is what Bell Hooks coined as a love ethic. So when I talk about love with my work with older adults, I'm not talking about romantic love.
Mm,
I'm talking about love as an extension of care. So for me, it's knowing how somebody likes their tea, like
mm,
really knowing. So,
yeah.
participant X likes it with two sugars. Participant Y, it's got to be in a mug, not a bone china cup. That's an act of love
Yeah.
because it's taking a real interest in somebody and it's giving them care. It could be steadying somebody's hand as they're having a drink. It could be um, helping somebody put on their coat. And then it could be moments where you're giving somebody a hug because they are grieving the loss of a loved one.
Mm,
Or it could be the disclosure of historical abuse.
mm,
I've had that before. And all of that is tiny micro acts of love. And I think, that's what applied theatre does. It's an extension of love. And that's why it's so powerful because, we as humans are hardwired for human connection. And
mm,
what I feel is genuine, authentic human connection. There's a saying of, you can be in a room full of people and still feel on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not about being in a room full of hundreds of people. It's coming to this creative space where there's a common interest, where through theatre you're learning about each other. It gives people a reason to have conversations. And then from that develops connection, community, belonging. And I think those are all the things that are good for the soul. And I think so often in life we're focusing on our physical well-being, keeping fit,
Mm.
getting 8 hours sleep. And sometimes we forget about, well, what does the soul need? And theatre is food for the soul. And money may make the world go round, but I think it's theatre and the arts that make it worth the ride.
Mm.
And that's whether people are going to a music festival, whether you're in a pub and you're singing to Mr. Brightside with your friends on a Friday night, that's artistry, that's music.
Yeah.
Or whether you're going to the theatre to feel something or maybe to forget.
Yeah.
These are the qualities that make us human. And I think we're in a society that forgets that. And I think we certainly have a government and successive governments that have forgotten that. And
Mm.
if we shut down all the creativity in the world, what a bleak existence it would be, in my opinion.
I don't even want to entertain that thought. Jesus
Mm.
Christ. But yeah, but amen to that, what you said there. And I remember someone else who's been on here said to me, so you say, do you remember during the pandemic? And I was like, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, what did the world turn to? It turned to Netflix. It turned to Amazon Prime. It turned to
Mhm.
network television. It turned to
Yeah,
Blu-ray players,
yeah,
DVDs,
the
you know,
arts,
the arts to
absolutely.
get us through. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and I
mean,
think that's oh, sorry.
no, it's okay. I was just saying, like, one thing that kept my parents actually going through lockdown was that they re-released the whole series of Downton Abbey on Amazon
Mm.
Prime. So for like 3 or 4 days, we just watched Downton Abbey again from the beginning right through to the end. It's yeah. Anyway, what were we going to say?
I was just going to say, some people say, well, why apply theatre is so powerful? Why not just have it in a news article or a book or an academic journal? What you want to write about and the social issue you want to highlight. But my response to that is theatre conveys a message in a way that a normal written article or document can't.
Oh, of
And not just theatre, but
course.
art. So if we look at Picasso's Guernica, the powerful way that represents the horror in that moment. Or if we look at Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List,
Yeah.
you know,
Big, big, big,
yeah,
big.
the storytelling of the horror that was happening there is far more effective than an MP standing up at a press conference saying, okay, XYZ.
Mm.
Because I think what storytelling does, and whether that's through song, through dance, through theatre, or through film, is it creates a sense of empathy. We become invested in the characters. And I strongly believe that once you have an audience, whether that be the general public or whoever, when they feel empathy for a character and a story, that's when change starts. Because not only are they just thinking with their minds, but they're feeling with their hearts.
Mm.
And it's when we truly feel and get that emotional investment in a cause, that's when you get allyship and people come with you and we can push for change.
Yeah, of course. It's theatre. I think who said it? Was it Tolstoy? I've got this confused before. Who said that theatre is a locomotive for change?
Yeah.
Always, always. Yeah. And there's of course a more recent example. Yeah, guys, I'm going to mention that show again because it's so good. Prima Facie. At the end of that, there's the tagline for the whole show, which is somewhere, sometime, something has to change.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of that, anyone who's not familiar, it's a show about young lawyer called Tessa, which was played by Jodie Comer. She fought for sexual assault cases and how the law still isn't great when it,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of recognizing people who sadly have been through that experience. and how more justice needs to be done to the perpetrators.
Mhm.
And however, in recent years, since the release of that show, it's now mandatory in, I think it's in Northern Ireland or Republic of Ireland, one of the two, for qualifying barristers, male or female, to watch the NT Live recording
Ah.
of Prima Facie, so they get an idea of what needs to change and what they need to
Mhm.
implement in their practice when
Mm.
they defend people who've been through something similar like the character has, which is Tessa. So all from, you're now getting art is now changing the way lawyers think in a court of law.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's just, this is what the arts do.
Mm.
It's more than a real thing. It changes everything. It changes the fucking world. But I'm just curious, like, what's some of the challenges of applied theatre? What challenges do you face, and how do you overcome them?
Oh, I think there's lots in a way. I think funding is one of the biggest challenges. So ultimately, getting the money to do the work and to do the work properly. I think because of lack of funding, you have these amazing facilitators who are underpaid.
Mm,
Applied theatre, you're not just there to make theatre, it's a multimodal role. So a practitioner will be a theatre maker, safeguarding officer, um, prop sourcing, budgets, fundraiser, and friend. And so that is highly skilled work. And I think, a lack of funds to properly pay people is really difficult, and then lack of funds to do the work in the first place. I think also the funding landscape results in projects having to finish before their time. So, what I mean by that is we know through research that the longer the project runs, the greater the intervention, the greater the impact. Whereas, from my experience of funding, the longest funding scale for one project was 3 years.
mm,
And then if you don't get more money, that's it, it's over. And you've developed this amazing community, you've done this really powerful work, and then it's done. So I think that's one of the biggest problems. I think mental health support for practitioners, um,
mm,
in my opinion, and if I could wave a magic wand, every arts organisation that is doing applied theatre work would have residential psychotherapists. Psychotherapists in particular, because I think of the depth of the therapeutic intervention, what that needs to be. And I think all practitioners should be supported to have that safe space where they can unload and go through that therapeutic journey. Um, I think another issue that we're facing in the sector is lack of diversity in the practitioners.
mm,
A lot of the practitioners are coming through higher education, whether that be a university or a drama conservatoire, which is brilliant and fantastic. But also, you're getting a particular demographic who are going into those institutions who tend to be white British and middle class. But those practitioners are then going often into environments which, these communities are often working class, are often from diverse ethnic backgrounds, are often low income households.
mm.
So there's a disconnect there. And I think that the work can lean in possibly becoming an act of white saviorism or class saviorism, in fact. So I think that needs to be addressed. And I think within those working with older adults, um, I think we need to be really addressing ageism and implicit
Mm.
ageism. And what I mean by that is, we are labouring within an ageist cultural landscape here in the UK and also in North America. And therefore, we all carry ageist assumptions. And something that I'm advocating for and that I'm working on in my book is, well, how can we as practitioners and organisations address our own ageism and how that casts a shadow on the way that we're working with older adults? So,
Mm.
I could talk for hours about all the different things that are happening in the industry and the great things, but also the problematic
No,
elements.
please do.
That's just a taster for you. A few ideas right there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Have you written to the Arts Council? What's their kind of view on applied theatre work
Well,
currently?
I think if we look at the Arts Council English and latest 10-year strategy, I think there's a great swing towards what they would coin as community work, community engagement. So I think ACE are very supportive of this work, but also they can't fund everything,
Mm.
and their funds are stretched, as every trust and foundations is.
Yep.
I do think that problematically, if we're looking at the latest 10-year strategy from ACE, it is predominantly focused on young people and children. I think in the report, the word older adults was only used a handful of times, which is really difficult because, in my opinion, it's art and culture for everyone, not arts and culture until you're 21, if that makes sense. And so, for me, I would challenge Arts Council England. If you're truly an Arts Council for England, that is for everybody of all ages. And we should be funding a pipeline of artistic provision, which is from babies all the way up to older adults.
Mm.
And I would like to see more, not more, but an equal distribution of funding being given to projects with older people. I think it's very important that we don't pit work against each other. This isn't a case of older work versus younger work. Those two areas are cousins, they're allies, they're both as important and valuable. But I think at the moment we're getting a lot of attention on work with young people and children and not enough on adults, and that includes adults in their 30s and 40s. I think that's a demographic that gets forgotten as well.
Yeah, but we need your work to help sort of exemplify that, and it's
Mm,
not just, of course, the elderly community are important, of course,
mm,
but all communities of all different ages, young, middle, and elderly as well, and
mm.
we need more of that. So I'd say just keep doing what you're doing, and things can change, and they will change. I know you said earlier that you like to go into kind of the rehearsal space not knowing what's going to happen. Like you like
Mm.
to just want to throw yourself in and see what happens. But so is there a starting point on day
Mm.
one of rehearsal, or is it literally just tell me your stories and let's just see where we go?
So the way that I work in my practice is I work often over years with participants. So it's very gentle, it's very subtle.
Yeah.
And day one would be, let's just get to know each other. Let's have fun.
Mm,
I think that's really important. I think that if people come to the group and they're experiencing a sense of joy, they'll come back. And that is pivotal to my work, because without the participants, there is no practice.
mm,
And it's very much their group. So in those first instances, I want to create an environment where people enjoy themselves. And when we're just playing, and that can be improvisations, it can be just warm-up games, getting into our bodies, getting used to what for many people will be a new language of creativity and of theatre.
mm,
And then what I will do is then, through creating characters, I might say, okay, so we've created Fred and Joy. They're great, they exist, here are these characters. Okay, I want you to think about what is an issue that's really impacting Fred at the moment,
mm,
and then we'll have a chat about it. And through conversation, often I'll say, oh, there's a common theme here. And with the Chatter project at the Chichester Festival Theatre, that theme was ageism. It came up again and again and again. So through the characters that we had created, through conversations, I thought, well, but this is what it's got to be about. It's got to be about ageism.
mm,
When we were working with the Lifehouse project, it was always about prejudice, towards the LGBTQ plus community. So therefore, when we created a very short performance in the pilot project, which we then performed at Tonic Housing for housing and care professionals, that's what the show had to be about.
mm.
So it's very subtle. I never go in and say, right, tell me the worst thing that's ever happened to you. It's not like that at all. But I gently go on a journey with the people I'm working with. And in my work, the tea break is very important. I always have a tea break. I think don't underestimate that within applied theatre, because it's by having a cup of tea and a biscuit or a piece of cake that we chat. And somebody may say something as casual as, oh, it's so ridiculous how much it costs to put the heating on.
Mm,
And now I have to sit here in the cold most days. And then before you know it, everyone's talking about it. And I'm thinking, as a theatre maker, as an artist, oh, maybe there's something in that. Maybe we need to create a piece of theatre about the fact that the cost of living crisis has got to the point where older adults are sat in the cold. And
mm,
that is wrong in the UK, one of the richest economies in the world.
mm.
So it's through that gentle process of what I call emerging. It's a sense of emergence in the space, and it's me as the artist and the researcher to be really finely tuning in and see what keeps coming up.
Yeah, and I think I remember you saying that there's no kind of standard 6 week rehearsal period. It's like departure from a traditional production, and this is some things I sort of noted from your interview at GSA. It's rooted in devising, collaboration, and building from the ground up. And of course, you mentioned the Worcester Group and Frantic Assembly as well. It's very much a unique art form. It's not like I mentioned, we've got 6 weeks. Let's rehearse this play. Do you know your lines? Yes. Okay, cool. Right. Let's get up. Let's evolve. Let's discover relationships, blah, blah, blah. But you're literally building something from the ground up
Yeah.
and devising something, and you're picking things simply and just free flowing. And but that's what the devising process is. At first it's like, oh God, are we gonna create anything at all? But you fight through those times, and eventually you find something like a little inspiration, and there's like, which thing kept coming up. In your case, it was ageism, or that area, and you're like, okay, we have our subject.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the way that I work with older adults is that they are my co-creators. So I enter the space with a collection of training and skills, and I am here to make creative offerings. And then from that, we work together to create the art. And I essentially just help the group sew it all together through my training and my expertise. But they are my co-collaborators. We're all
Mm.
artists in the space, and we debate.
Hmm.
Sometimes we disagree on artistic ideas.
Oh, of
Sometimes on
course.
artistic differences. That cliche saying. But ultimately, we're in it together, and it's not a traditional rehearsal space. It's not a case of I'm the director, here's a script, I'm going to tell you what to do.
Mm.
It's far more organic, and for me, that's more powerful because they have a strong sense of ownership over the work, and it is their work, it is their stories, and that's really what Applied Theatre is about. It's providing a platform for those stories and voices to be heard.
Mm. And we've got to hear these stories because, of course, the theatre helps to, other people in the audience may similarly be going, yeah, I've had that experience as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And people think, oh, yeah, I'm not just the only person who's going through this or experiencing this, which
yeah.
is really powerful.
Mm. Oh, for sure. We need to keep telling stories
Mm.
above anything, and I mentioned Prima Facie earlier. There's another show called A Little Life, which I've talked about a lot here. I've had some of the cast members on, and they said, I think both of them collectively had so many people go backstage. I know Prima Facie and probably a few more, but I don't know about Little Life. Just how many people came backstage and told Jodie and the rest of the creative team, the X, Y, and Z happened to me when I was
Mm.
15, and they're probably in their 30s or 40s now, and it's taken me X, Y, and Z years to finally talk about it as a result of seeing this play, or
Mm.
seeing your piece about ageism or that kind of thing. And it shows that, yeah, I remember seeing a play just before Christmas, and I went to see Inter Alia, which again was the
Mm.
same, by the same writer of Prima Facie, actually, Susie Miller. Did you see it at all?
No, no.
Oh, if you get the chance, just go. I mean, it's on in cinemas at the moment. Just go. A similar sort of topic. Well, I won't give it away, but there's one of the main characters in it does something, really, really serious, and at the end of it, one member of the group I went to watch it with said, "Yeah, God, I was so." He was not a big theatre person, not a big
Mm.
theatre goer, but he looked at me and he said, "Yeah." So I said, "Do you enjoy the play?" He said, "Yeah." I had to stop two of my friends from doing that back in the day.
Wow.
And I was like, really? He said, yeah, I remember both of them tried to do this thing, and
Mm.
I had to stop them and say, no, you don't do that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether you're a big theatre person or doesn't matter who you are, but storytelling has the power to change lives and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always say to people that humans have been telling stories since the dawn of time.
Hmm.
Whether they were drawing pictures on the cave wall or they were sat around a campfire using stories to share warnings and learnings and messages. So it is in our almost our fiber, our being to share stories. And theatre is just an extension of that. It's just those stories on a particular platform with an audience who are congregating to hear it.
Mm.
And I think because of that, it holds a social power that doesn't happen everywhere. Yeah, and it is an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah. Just remember our history more than anything,
Yeah, yeah.
Remember it goes right back to the dawn of humankind, just
Mhm.
telling stories. And I don't mean like, oh, I went to Tesco and I went to
Mm.
buy orange juice and I ended up with apple juice, just not banal stories like that. But, or maybe, who knows? Maybe there's something to that. But, stories about just, yeah, and embracing vulnerability as well. I know I mentioned that earlier as
Yeah.
well, and particularly with this one as well, you don't shy away from tackling big sensitive subjects
Mhm.
at all. You want to bring it all to the forefront. And I remember speaking to Catherine McNamara as well. Her
Mhm.
practice was about child exploitation
Mhm.
and trafficking and that kind of thing. And go check that out, guys. She goes into a lot of detail about that. You know, she does supply theatre like yourself as well. And really, we're not scared to have these conversations because things need to change. Because ultimately, we want the world to be a happy place. We want people to
Mhm.
feel loved and welcomed and everything in between. And theatre has the power to change that more than
Yeah,
anything. So,
absolutely.
yeah, brilliant. Say, how much time have we got? Yeah, we've got some time. So, yeah, just got a few more things out for you, Georgia. So, first of all, thank you for joining me in your evening time, by the way. I really do appreciate it. So, I just want to talk about, because you're now at GSA, you're teaching applied theatre there now. So, for anyone who's watching or listening to this who's thinking about applying for applied theatre courses, not maybe at GSA or anywhere else,
Mm.
what do you look for when in applicants? Like, what do you look for in a personal statement? What do you want people to show in the audition room that makes you think, yeah, I want that person on the course. I want to work with that person.
Mm. So that's a really good question. So I would say, in the first instance, somebody who's actually Googled what applied theatre is.
That's a good
That
start.
sounds really basic, but every now and then I get some people, and I think, oh, I'm not sure you know what you're trying to sign yourself up for. So I would say, do your research. Um, I think don't just apply for the course. Or my course is applied in contemporary theatre at GSA, and I would say, don't just apply because you just want to come to drama school. Yeah, that is completely the wrong thing to do,
Yeah.
because if you have to be on a course that you're invested in and you're passionate about, and that you understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean you have to know everything about applied theatre at all, because that's why you're coming. You're coming to learn. But what I do mean is that you have a sense of what applied theatre is, so you know that you will be working in communities, that this work isn't about performing as a member of the RSC or anything like that. It's very different. This is not actor training.
Mm.
This is, if you're doing an applied theatre course, it is facilitated training, which is completely different. So I would say, do your homework, and I look for that in my interviews and auditions. And then following that, I look for people who are brave and are willing to take risks. I have students who have been doing drama all their life and have gone to places like Brit School. I also have students who perhaps have only ever done drama at school, and that is completely fine,
Wow.
because what I'm looking for is people who have courage, who are going to give it a go, and who are going to take those risks, because that's what art is. I need somebody who's going to just get stuck in and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I also look for people who can take feedback well. You have to be very resilient to be in the arts. And if you're going to be at a drama conservatoire, you're going to get feedback all the time. And that's great. You know, as myself, I want feedback all the time. You know, every day is a school day. And that's how we learn and grow. So it's an individual who's resilient to feedback. And I also look for people who are team players. Now, in applied theatre, I always say to my students, if you want to do this work, you have to embody the principles of applied theatre, which is somebody who is a team player, can work with others, can listen, can hold space, can be someone who can be playful and fun, but perhaps most importantly, can be kind and empathetic and can try and be non-judgmental. And that doesn't mean you're a perfect person, because no one is, and we are all human. Yeah, we all have those human traits of a bit of jealousy sometimes, or envy. But it's people who are trying, you know, who are trying to hold space for others and to be kind and to be generous and to be open. And so, yeah, you know, I can't teach those qualities. And so those are the things that I look for. And, you know, things like that, they come through when I'm interviewing people, and then in our devising workshop that we do at GSA for applied and contemporary theatre, you know, I observe and I think, oh, you know what, they're really encouraging other people in their group. Or they give ideas and they can lead, but they also listen and they support others in sharing their ideas.
Yeah, that's a big quality. That's a good
So
quality.
yes, you know, and then somebody who has real passion for theatre,
Yeah.
you know, and for this art form.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the passion, of course, that's number one. And of course, yeah, I think it's, yeah, I remember even in acting auditions, they say, we know you like drama. We know you like it. We know you like acting. So what else is there to your bow that what makes you want to come here? What makes you want to do all this stuff? And I think which is a good thing. And so I'm just curious, what do you think? I'll do a little plug for yourself here now. So what does your training offer that that other people in your field do you feel can't? What makes you unique as an applied theatre expert?
What, as me as an individual?
Yeah, like well, your
Oh,
training, your
my
training. How?
training. Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think one of the key things is if we're looking at me as an individual, is my background. So yeah, I come from humble roots. I was the first person in my family to go to university, you know, first generation.
Nice.
So, you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with coming from super privileged background. You know, if your parents are doctors or a scientist, that's amazing and fabulous. But I think it is important to, or not important, I think there is value in being taught by somebody who has had to work really hard to get into an industry that is dominated by people who have enormous amount of privilege. And that's not to say that I don't have privileges. I think it's important. I do have privileges, but I am somebody who's had to work from the bottom and was the outsider and in many ways the underdog. So I know what it takes to get into those spaces and to break through. So I think that's an important quality that I bring as a person. I'm also somebody who has done lots of different things in applied theatre. So I've specialised in older adults, but I've worked with people who have been babies all the way to, I think the oldest person I've ever worked with was over 100.
Wow.
You know, so I've worked with lots of different communities, from young carers to young people living in inner cities, to children who are experiencing child sexual exploitation. I've worked with mothers who are experiencing domestic abuse. I've worked with refugees. I've also worked with, you know, different youth theatres, and the joys that that can bring to young people. So I think having an array of experiences. I also think, you know, the fact that I work at the Guildford School of Acting, which is one of the best drama conservatoires in the country. And, you know, if you come to GSA and you come and do the applied and contemporary theatre degree, it is a fusion of two disciplines, being contemporary theatre, so that's making your own work and devising your own work, and you are very much the author of your own creative destiny in that way. And also the applied element, which is using theatre to work with different communities and to spotlight different social issues. So if you work with me, you're going to be working with me on that fantastic course. And I think one of the best elements of the course is that we have 2 work placements. So you do a work placement in your second year, and then you also have the opportunity to do a professional training year where you take a year out between, it's after your second year and before your third year. So you come off timetable for a year, and I've got students at the moment who are working in an array of different arts organisations. So you get that professional experience. You know, before you graduate, you have that network and you have it on your CV. On the Applied and Contemporary Theatre degree, we also have lots of opportunities to get experience in the community. And my students run their own projects. And so when they leave GSA, they go to those job interviews with an array of different projects that they've led, produced, and facilitated. So they know what it is to do a risk assessment. They know the basics of safeguarding. They know how to form and nurture a community partnership, which are things that you all need in the industry. And then also at GSA, we have access to world leading artists and theatre trainers and practitioners. So I think, you know, there's a mixture of me as an individual, what I bring, but also, you know, working at the Guildford School of Acting. And so, yes, if I had to sell myself as a little nice product, I would say in a nutshell, those are just some of the good qualities. And I think lastly, I also believe that training should be fun. And so I try and have fun with my students. I don't think learning should be a Victorian dogmatic, you know, I stand here and you listen and I am the all-knowing being. I think, you know, let's get in the studio. You know, we have to have respect, of course, and it's a professional environment, but we can have fun. We can laugh, we can share a joke, and we can have fun while we're learning. And that's something that I really try and create on the course as well, is a culture of playfulness and joy.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. You know, thank you for that. Yeah, it's yeah, you know, it's a good place to be, Guildford, and you know, I'm not just saying that because I'm a graduate or anything, but you know, you learn so much while you're there, and of course, just having fun is part of the training as well because you love what you do.
Yeah.
You love acting, you love musical theatre, you love applied theatre, you love stage management. You know, all these things. You know, just shows the fun of being an artist is just enjoying what we're doing and
Yeah.
telling these stories, and especially your stories as well, like in applied theatre and everything. It's big, and we thank you for that more than anything. Georgia, I've just got 2 more questions left for you today, but just thank you so much for your time this evening. I know we're late into the night now, but just thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. So I've just got 2 quick fire questions left for you today. It's the last 2 questions for every guest. So the first one is, what would you say was a bit of advice you wish you heard when you were starting out?
Oh, that is a good question. Bit of advice. I've got 2 bits.
Of course, go for
Okay,
it.
I'm going to give you 2 bits.
Yeah.
The first one is, don't ask directions from a person who hasn't been where it is that you want to go.
That's good.
And the second one, and I would say this to anybody going into theatre or the arts, is learn what shame is, identify how it operates within you, and start to work on how you can form your own shame resilience. And the reason I say that is because we're in an industry where you are critiqued a lot, no matter what you do. And so often, shame is the voice in our heads that goes, "You're not good enough. You're rubbish. You're no good. You're useless." And that's whether you're an actor, you're a producer, you're a facilitator, or you're a theatre technician. I think so often we have that voice. And I think in your training, if you don't start to identify how that voice manifests and how it impacts you, it can cripple you as an artist, because you become so fearful of doing work that is not going to be good,
Mm.
and that you aren't good enough, that it stops you from doing any work at all.
Mm.
And I think if you can just, at the early point in your career, and I wish I'd done this, I think if you can understand what shame is, it will aid you massively, and it will aid you, it will aid you as an artist. So, and if you are interested in shame and shame studies, then I would recommend hugely looking at the work of Brené Brown, who was a
Oh, yeah.
shame researcher, and her work is very, very accessible. I'm a massive fan of Brené Brown.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think anybody wants to go to drama school, read her books or listen to her podcast, or she has an amazing TED talk on shame.
Hmm.
Yeah, because it is that in shame studies, it's described as the master emotion. Shame, they say, is our bedrock of emotions, and everything comes from that. So if you have low levels of shame, you're going to have high levels of confidence and self-belief and self-worth. If you have high levels of shame, you're going to probably have high levels of depression, self-loathing and isolation. So it's really important to get on top of that emotion
Yeah.
and know how it works within you.
Yeah. Annihilate it early. Yeah. Save you a
Yeah,
lot of
and
time.
become aware of it. And I think the thing, we all experience shame, and it's, it's always present. I think it's not an emotion that goes away forever. But I think if you can have a moment of, oh, I'm feeling shame right now, then it's good to identify it and call it what it is.
Yeah. Just having open conversations about it and just let it out.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
No shame in recognizing shame at all.
Yeah,
You know.
definitely. We should get that on the t-shirt.
Yeah. I'll print it. I'll send it to you.
Do.
Yeah. Is it just, yeah, just identify what's there, get rid of it, and know that, as always, you are enough. You're
Absolutely, yeah. And
more
work with
more than
it.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sit with the difficult emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think often we can feel something that's difficult. It could be anger, it could be embarrassment or something, and we just want to get rid of that emotion, and that may manifest as, I don't know, it could be drinking a lot, for example.
Mm.
It could be binge eating. It could be not eating enough.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, just to know how that operates, how it works within you. Like I said, I think that can be really transformative, because drama school's not easy. It's an amazing experience. It's also really difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And the industry is not easy. It's a very tough industry, no matter what you do. And yeah, I wish that I'd known about shame and how it works a lot sooner. And for me, just knowing about it has definitely transformed my life, both in the theatre and outside of it.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, again, we thank you for your experiences and your practice as well, so more than anything. And finally, today, what would you say has been an experience or experiences that you've had in your career up to now that
Mm.
you'll never ever forget?
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow, that I'll never forget.
Yeah.
Um, wow, so many. I've been truly, truly blessed with my career. But something that sprung to mind, in 2020, I was furloughed. At the time, I was working at the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden, and I
Oh,
was
wow.
furloughed.
Wow. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I'm only going to be off for a few weeks. Very naive.
Yeah.
So I
That's all.
wanted,
We all
yeah.
thought that, didn't we? Yeah.
So I thought I want to do something to keep me busy, and I started my career in a care home.
Hmm.
And at that time, I was living not far from it, so I popped in, and I thought, oh, I could come and help out, and I could do a bit of theatre. I thought, we'll go in, and I'll try some new things out and keep my practice sharp. And long story short, I was on the front line during the pandemic for 8 months.
Wow.
And I think anybody who worked in a care setting during the pandemic will agree that what you saw on television does not convey the horror that was happening in those spaces. And I was doing all sorts, I was doing payroll at one point. because the administrator obviously had COVID, and doing all sorts of different things, from helping people get dressed and also doing a little bit of theatre from a socially distanced way. And the reason I bring this up is because at the time there was a resident who I had been creating stories with, and she was dying, and I was telling her that I was going to do my PhD. And we had done this session where we were creating a story using pictures to inspire narrative and characters. And at the end, she said to me, I want you to know that when you do your PhD and as you move forward in your career, there'll be moments that are tough and you'll think you can't do it. And in those moments, I want you to know that I will always be on your shoulder telling you to go on. And that has always stayed with me. And this is what I mean when I say, when I work with my participants, when I work with older adults, they give more to me than I could ever give to them, because I am sharing the gift of theatre, but they are showing so much more back to me. And yeah, that's just an example of, at the end of a very short one-to-one storytelling workshop, what she shared. And I think about her all the time. And I think, and I think about the residents in that particular care home a lot, because that's where I started the theatre group. And that's where my creative ageing practice began. And sadly, none of them are with us anymore. But I know that they would all be absolutely thrilled at what I've gone on to achieve. And they wouldn't be surprised either, because they always used to say to me, you're going to do something. So even when I doubted myself, when I was 22, just starting off, no experience in it, they believed in me. So that's just one memory out of hundreds that will always stay with me.
That's a memory. That is a memory. Yeah. Now, what was her name?
I won't share it for safeguarding reasons.
Okay. Okay.
Just to protect her privacy.
Okay, sure.
And her family might be watching this.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But yeah, no, she was a wonderful, wonderful woman who totally believed in my work and my practice. And yeah, she'd be thrilled, absolutely thrilled.
Brilliant. I'm sure she is. Yeah, like, whoever you are and wherever you are, thank you. And everything in between. Wow, that's one hell of a story. That's one hell of a story. Again, just keep going. Like we mentioned earlier, it's not a cliche. People say, "Oh, it's a cliche." No, it's one of the best bits of advice you can give.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun chatting with you.
Yeah, no, it's been great, Georgia. Thank you so much for your time again. And, it's been great to hear all about applied theatre and stuff. I haven't had one of these conversations, I don't think, since I interviewed Catherine a few years ago. So, I'm sure we'll have more of these chats in the future and get more updates. And of course, I look forward to the book as well, and everything in between. If you're doing a book launch, let me know. That'd be great.
I will do.
And I look forward to what more projects you get up to in the future, and what more stuff we can discuss in the future. So thank you so much, Georgia, for your time. I really do appreciate it. If you just hang on, I'll finish the recording. We'll have a tiny debrief, then you can shoot back to your evening. But wow, so many things covered. That's mental. And yeah. Just thank you, Georgia. And of course, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic podcast. I'll be back very, very soon. And Georgia Bowers, thank you.